All right, in this video we're going to be talking about shapes and how we can leverage shapes to improve our skill acquisition. So, it's really two different places shape change are going to happen. They're either going to happen on the surface or they're going to happen in the air. And that's really the focal point we need to pay attention to is, are we talking about shape change on the surface or are we talking about shape change in the air? And when you separate those two, you can start to identify what you're trying to chase after. So we're going to make that distinction. There's three main shapes that matter, okay? And there's a story to these shapes, and once you understand how they work with each other, pretty much everything becomes self-evident. So I have a closed shoulder angle, a closed hip angle, okay? My hands and feet are on one side of my hips and shoulders. That's what you need to know, okay? Closed angle, hands and feet are on one side of my hips and my shoulders. We're going to come over to this image over here, the arch position, okay? And on here I have, again, shoulders and hips, and my hands and feet are on the opposite side of my shoulders and hips. And what you need to understand in a shape change is that you're going to be going from one side of your body to the other side of your body. And it doesn't really matter where you start, you're going to finish at some point on the other side. There's a relationship that's going to happen. When you finish, okay, that depends on what skill you're doing, but you're going to see that happen. All while you're going to pass through a straight position. The straight position then is everything is in alignment. We'll just say our feet are here. And you know, there's interpretation to be had here. This could be a really tight arch. This could be a really tight hollow. This could have some adjustments and tweaks. But for the most part, you're going to be in the straighter position in the transition of these two. Okay? So that is a key point we need to understand. This usually matters most when we're connected to the surface. So we care most about the straight positions when we're on a surface. When we're in the air, we usually generally care about these two positions more, but this will come into play if you're talking about twisting and things like that. All right, so let's address the surface issue. The surface issue is we have three phases on surface and shape change. We have the entry into the surface. How are we contacting that surface and how are we entering the surface? Okay, what shape are we need to be when we enter the surface? And then as we enter the surface, the load phase is more about how are we going to load the surface into a straight position. We want to be straight because that's where the max amount of force is going to be put into the apparatus, which means that we're going to have the most energy put into the apparatus, and that energy then is going to convert back into us and then launch us through the air and do awesome, amazing, cool things. So we're loading, we're entering, we're loading into a straight position, and then kapow, blast off, launch. Now we're in launch mode. Well, excuse me. Well, I'm going to be in my straight position, my load. This is dealing with a surface. A surface has a level of travel. So let's just say this is a trampoline or something like that. As I'm not standing on the trampoline, it's just going to be hanging out there level flat. But once I put a force down on the trampoline and I stand on it, it's going to start to sag and it's going to have a distance that it's going to travel. This distance, okay, matters. The load happens at the bottom. We're entering, we're touching the surface, we're loading it so that the surface is going down. Now the surface is down here, okay? We load it, we get to straight, and then, or wherever we want our angle to be, and then as it's moving up, we're transitioning from that straight position into the next shape change so that we can get ready to launch. And so now this is moving up and it's going back and it's returning back to its original position. And then boom, we leave the surface. So entry, load, launch. I'm touching the surface, I'm bottoming the surface out, and then the surface is going back up or changing directions, and that's when I'm moving through into another position ready to get fired like a cannon right out of here, okay? So those are the three areas of surface. Now, if I'm doing front entry, front tucks, front pikes, front layouts, cartwheels, round off, front entry, I'm going to be dealing with pike in my shoulders and hips and my entry. I'm going to be loading the surface. If I'm doing a round off, I'm going to be loading the surface on my hands, okay? And you could say it's on your feet, but you're loading onto your hands. And let's just talk about it in the sense of, okay, my hands are going into the entry phase. I'm closing my shoulders. I'm closing my hips. I'm getting that kick going. I'm getting ready to straighten onto my load hands. And then I'm ready to leave my hands launch. I'm going to have a little bit of a kick arch. I'm going to kick through that straight position, a little bit extension, but then I'm going to twist. Oh my goodness. I went from an arch position, twisted, and now all of a sudden I'm back into my piked hollow position. And so now I'm going to get launched and I'm going to kind of do the little cat twist going on, and I'm going to twist through the air into my piked shoulder position, which then converts me, I'm doing a round off, right? So I went from piking into the surface, into finding a straight position on my hands, into getting launched off my hands and turning around and getting my feet now going into the ground. I'm launching, but I'm rotating. And so I'm now in that round off phase. I'm back into this shape. My feet are going to hit the ground. Okay, so now I'm hitting the ground with my feet. We'll just draw the picture out. So I'm hitting the ground whoop, doop, doop, with my feet. Okay, and now I'm going this direction. Perfect. I'm hitting the ground with my feet. I need to get ready to load the surface again. And so I'm trying to get back to that straight shape. So I just finished my round off sequence. And now I'm going back into this position. Okay, and now that surface is getting loaded, but I don't want to keep going up. I want to get going down before my feet leave the ground, right? So I have to go from there to here. And you're going to see this. And then my feet will start going up. And when my feet start going up, hopefully this is all forcing myself to go down. And then that back handspring is happening. And now again, I'm leaving the surface with my feet. And now I'm getting back ready for an entry position with my hands. And so then my hands are going to be going onto the surface. Okay, so now my hands are coming into the surface. And what do we usually do? We load the surface. We're entering the surface at a bend. And then we're loading the surface, so then let's just be really idealistic here. This is not actually the shapes that are going to be happening. And then we're loading the surface in our straight position, but we don't want to just get shot straight up in the air. We need our feet to travel over, so we're going to make some form of a shape change happen so that we can do this, so that when our hands get launched up in the air, our feet are coming down. And so in the launch position, we're changing shape. And we can see that our hands and feet are on one side of our shoulders and hips. Our hands and feet are in line, and now our hands and feet are on the other side. And so they're following that story. And it just keeps following it, and it just keeps following it, and just keeps following it. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If I'm doing back entry, hands and feet, hands and feet. If I'm doing front entry, hands and feet, hands and feet. It's all the same. So you just have to start worrying about when it comes to shape, where are my hands and feet, and are they getting onto the other side of my body simultaneously at the same time? And are they, or when they're supposed to, in order, in sequence? Surfaces, entry, load, launch. We need to find that straight position to have max amount of force into the surface to launch us the most amount of distance or convert that energy back into the system so that we can keep it going, essentially. So entry, load, launch. But now we're in the air. We don't care. We don't care about the surface. We're not dealing with this. We're in the air. We did an entry, load, launch, and pow, we're in the air. Now we're floating through the sky like outer space. And now I have a bunch of shape changes that need to happen. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I know. Yeah, talk about like a back layout or something like that. And you see a kid do a takeoff position and they just throw in a nice arch position and they're just staying arched all the way through. They're like, yeah, I'm going to stay arched all the way through until I'm like about to die on the ground, and then I'll just turn into a funny piked position and be like, yay, I piked on the ground. Right? And so they're just like, rotate, continue rotating until they get to this piked position on the ground, and then that's what they are. And you're like, but I want a hollow shape. I want to get hollow here. Okay, so now we have this problem. This is incredibly nuanced. So you got to put your thinking caps on and go with me on this journey because it's really nuanced, okay? I'm taking off. We're just going to take off. We're going to pretend we're on a trampoline. We're just going to take off from here, okay? And I have a little bend. Feet, hands behind my shoulders and my hips, okay? So that's my takeoff position. And I need to know where my center of mass is, or what I'm going to be rotating around, my center of gravity. I need to know where that is. And that's kind of behind me right over here, okay? Now, I'm taking, we're discussing with air, okay? We're in the outer space, we're in air, and we're floating around, and we want to know how we're going to rotate. I'm taking that imaginary point that I have to be able to know where it is, and we're on a trampoline. So we're sending it straight up, okay? We're just going to be perfect about this. This is going straight up. At some point in this story, okay, I want to get to my laid out hollow position. At some point in the story, I'm going to be like this, with that dot going up. So notice now when I get to, from this position, my center of mass or center of gravity, depending on which part of the story we want to be talking about, but our center of gravity, let's just say that, I'm rotating around it, is here. It's on the back side of me. But now as it's traveling up, it gets to the front side of me. So I get to my early hollow position, okay? I snap to that hollow. And now I'm rotating around this. So now, okay, I'm getting upside down. I'm like, wee, this is so great. I love everything about what I'm doing. My center of gravity's there. I'm rotating around it. Everything is working out just fine. But this is happening on the up. So what happens on the down? Well, on the down then, I'm here. My center of gravity goes, hey, I got to start falling, man. I can't keep going up. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start falling. Well, you're attached to it. You're still going. So now all of a sudden you're like, oh snap! I didn't put enough energy in to keep the rotation going. So I'm going to land on my head. Okay. So let's pretend like you got here, and now all of a sudden you're just going to fall and land on your head. So what you end up doing is you end up shape changing, and you end up doing this. You're like, I'm not going to make it, so I'll pike, because it's still adding rotation. It's conserving the energy of rotation. And then you just get that little tiny bit enough so that you just don't die and you finish whatever in a pike, and now your center of mass is going down. And so on the down, I want you to notice you're on top of your center of gravity. On the down, you're on top of your center of gravity. On the down. But where were we? On the up. On the up, we were wanting to be below our center of gravity. Okay? On the up, we want to be below. So we have this trajectory. This is an imaginary thing that's happening. We have to visualize in our mind. However, the better you get at gymnastics, the more you can predict what the trajectory of your flip is going to be. And then you actually can adapt and shape change and make the adjustments according to how the trajectory feels. And so when we have a trajectory that's like this, okay, and we know that that's the trajectory, we know that at the halfway point, at some point here, I want to be able to get on top of my center of mass and gravity as it's falling down. And we know that on the rise, I want to get underneath. That's what we start to understand, okay? The earlier I can get underneath it, the sooner I can get to my straight positions. All my twisting can happen there. So it's happy time with twisting. But let's see how crazy this might be with, let's just say, a double layout. Because a double layout is like the extreme level of flipping. Okay, so let's just talk about the extreme level for a second. So I have a surface. I'm going to do a pike down because why not? Okay, we're going to pike down so we have some crazy shape. I'm pushing the surface down. Okay, great. I'm now standing up. I'm loading everything. Okay, cool. Right? And my hips are right here. I'm finding straight. There's my hands and feet on one side of my hips and shoulders, but they got to get to the other side, which means this is going to stay relatively like this, but I'm going to bend this. Okay, good. I got my massive bend happening. Oh, look at my hands and feet are on the other side of my hips and shoulders. So far, everything's working out okay. But now what's the trajectory I'm going to go in? I don't want to go directly up. If my whole body goes up, I'm not going to double layout. I'm not going to be able to rotate and rise. So I need to go backwards. But I don't want to go straight back because that would be more like a whip, and then I'm going to double layout into the ground. And so we're trying to aim our trajectory somewhere, let's just say at a 45 angle. And we're just going to use a sharp angle, not a nice gradual one, so that you can kind of just see what's happening, okay? So here's the apex of our flip. We're going to go. At some point, I'm going to be in an arched position, okay? At some point, I'm going to be in an arched position. And so now I'm breaking my rule. Dun, dun, dun. I'm breaking my rule, okay? Now I'm going in this arched position here, and I'm going to be taking off arched position. I'm not really aligned. My drawing's terrible, okay? And I'm going to be then finishing somewhere arched position, upside down, okay? This whole time, I'm flipping through the air. I'm on the wrong side of my center of mass. That's not good, is it? It's not good. Okay, but what happens? What happens is you get to the top in a double layout. You get to the top up here, okay? Your nose, we'll put our nose like right here so you know that's the front of your face. Okay, so that's the front of your face. That's the front of your face. Here's the front of your face. Okay, so somehow we get up here. And now we get to the sticky spot where you're like, I'm going to die. Okay, if you're really good at double layouts, you may not feel you're going to die. But if you're not so good at double layouts, that's the point where you're like, crap. This isn't going well, okay? And you can see it because all of a sudden the rotation just stops. You're like, hopefully you got enough to go with it. So here's what happens. My center of mass is on the wrong side of my body. And so what happens in a double layout is the person gets to here, okay? And they still rotate. Whoa, okay, finally we're getting where I want to be because I am on top. But the problem is My head's over here. And you're like, I'm not going to land like that. That's not going to work. I'm on top, but I'm on the wrong side of the center. And so what you have to do then is you're like, okay, so now I have to change sides. So we have to get to a straight. This whole time we've never gotten to a straight position. We've never changed sides. And so now we're going to straighten out. Head's now over here. Okay, and this is like everything went bad. All right, this is like the everything went bad story, which is very real. All right, so now I'm on the wrong side, but I need to get on the right side. I need to get on the correct side of my center. And so I get to a straight shape. That puts my center here. It's not really following our dotted line, but that's okay. And then now I can shape change. Now I'm about to land on my head. My head is going straight into the ground, and I'm like, oh, I got a direction problem. I should get my feet down. And so then you're like, cool, I'll do this. Okay, I'm going to drop my feet down and pike, and now I'm on the correct side of my center. And my feet are now aiming for the ground, and boom, I'm going to land with my chest down. It's incredibly awkward and uncomfortably looking. So, double layout problem. No, you're not underneath it on the rise. You're on the wrong side. You're on top of it, on top of it, on top of it, and then you get to this sticky spot because you're on top of it. Okay? You get to a sticky spot because you're on top of it. At some point, because you're double rotating, you do get on the correct side. At some point, you will be, I'm just going to erase all this, right? Because we are obviously rotating around our center, okay? So at some point in the double layout, okay, we're here, there's our center, okay? At some point, I am going to get to this position where I'm here, here, and there. Okay, at some point I'm going to get to that position where I am now below it. But the problem is in back tumbling, when you're below it on the rise, it sets you up to be on the wrong side on the fall. And so that's the reason why a double layout gets so nuanced and tricky, because you've got to dial in finishing correctly at the right spot. If you don't get to the correct side on the right spot of the up and the down, if you don't make that adjustment, and this is really where straight is supposed to happen. Okay, that's where you usually will find straight most commonly. If you don't get to that change of direction, then the down just changes dramatically on the whole story. It just looks off. Go watch people who do double layouts, and it's like almost like 2 flips on the rise, or 1.5 flips on the rise essentially, and the last half of the flip is on the fall essentially, and it looks awesome. But if you get into a triple backflip, okay, you get to a triple backflip, what? Triple backflips? I'm not teaching those, okay? If I get to a triple backflip and you go watch somebody do a triple backflip, they get their knees to pull into their chest, and they get underneath that, I don't know what's happening to that guy's head. They get underneath their center of mass so ridiculously early because they need to ride their center as long as they possibly can. So they snap into it as early as they possibly can, and they ride it as long as they possibly can, going, I hope I did it quick, early and fast enough, and I hope my distance is going to carry me so I can make 3 happen. Because boy, are they just, and then they're just falling, and they're like, smush, I'm landing here in my little, here we go, in my funny, where's my legs at? Wrong direction. There's my chest. They're landing like that, like boom, I'm landing in this position. All because it's happening. But I'm trying to get underneath it as early as possible. What do we want to try to teach people? Well, let's just look at the simplicity again of where I am in shape up and down on easier skills. Just because, right? Why not? Okay, I'm doing a forward roll. Okay, doing a forward roll. Where's my center? It's right there. Where am I? I'm on that side. Where's my hands and feet? They're on the opposite side of my shoulders and hips. Okay, cool. Not a lot of shape change is going to be happening here, but we do want to know where our center is. Well, when I get into my tuck stand, doop, doop, okay, boop, again, I'm on top of my center. When I roll onto my back, now I'm below my center. Where's the part that the students have the hardest part in the forward roll? I mean, obviously they have a little fear aspect. That's a funny tuck stand, ignore it. Obviously they have a little difficulty of pushing their hips over their head. But more often than not, people do not keep their core position tight, and they cannot stay on the bottom side and rotate it up into, let's just say, a nice little tuck stand. Okay? So it's from going from the bottom to back to the beginning that they struggle with. I'm on top, I'm falling over it, But now I'm underneath it and I need to rise above it. That's where the sticky spot is. And you're going to find that going from below it to above it is where the sticky spot is. That's where skills get difficult, is to go from below to above. Wait a second. Hold on to your hats. Let's think about this for a second. Okay, don't get too excited. I know. Here we go. I'm doing a glide. Where's my center? I'm below it. Where do I need to get? I need to get to a position where I am above it. Okay? I don't know what's wrong with that person's hips. Let's do that. Okay? I need to get to a place where I'm above it. That's why it's hard. That's why it's hard. You're starting below your center and you're trying to get on top of your center. And when you're trying to get on top of your center, it is difficult. That's it. Hands down, it is difficult. How, Raleigh? I still don't believe you. Of course. Why should you? Okay. So why is it when a student learns a back layout by themselves at home on a trampoline, they throw the arched position? You ever thought about that? Why is it that when a student learns the back layout on a trampoline, they arch and they stay arched the entire time until the last second? Because that is hard to do, and so they do it at the last second by shape changing, because they cannot get on the other side of it because it's hard to do. It takes coordination, it takes strength, it takes timing, it takes a whole lot more pieces, and so they'll get on top of their center of mass at the very last second upon landing, but they don't get on top of it in the correct spot. Again, yes, I'm on top of my center of mass, but my nose is over here. I'm on the wrong side. I'm on the wrong side, and that's important to understand. You don't want to be on the wrong side. You have to be on the correct side. And so they're on the wrong side and on top because it's really hard to do a back layout, very difficult, we should say, not hard, it's difficult, okay, to do a back layout and snap the legs. There's a lot of trust factor to get to a point where you're here. That's just really difficult to get to that snap and then to ride that rotation where you're now here, right? And to ride it to where all of a sudden you're now here. And to ride it, I mean, like, because look at how much the rotation's spending in this position and how much rotation you're doing. You had to throw and ride that whole entire story on the correct side. That is what is difficult, and that is what you're going to find a lot of students struggle with. Okay? Okay, Raleigh, you're talking too much. I don't care. How does it still apply to me? Okay, we're going to make it apply to you even more. All right? Because why not? We still got to make it apply. You still got to care. So I'm in a handstand. Okay? I fall into a bridge. I'm on top of my center. But now I need to stand up. I need to stand up. What happens in front limbers? What happens? 100% of the time, anytime somebody's learning to front limber, what happens? They can't stay on top. Can they? No, they can't. Nope. They drop their arms. They do this funny bendy thing. They're like, maybe I'll survive. They probably buckle their knees a little bit. They're like, mwah, mwah. Maybe I'll survive. Their head's like here. They're doing all of that stuff to try to stay on top. And then gravity kicks in and they're like, just kidding. And they're like, blah, I landed on the ground. Nothing happened. Staying on top is hard. It's really hard. Okay? And so it shows up in the skill, and we see all this problem. We're sitting here going, oh, you got to do this thing, you got to do that thing. It's like, can you appreciate the difficulty of staying on top of your center in the rising phase? Not easy. And so again, this is trying to rise, and I'm trying to stay on top. That's what makes it difficult. So you can start looking at skills and going, okay, what side of their center of mass are they supposed to be on? First off, you should know that. That should be memorized. You should be able to look at every single skill and go, you're supposed to be on this side of your center at this spot, and this side of your center at that spot. And then you should start to realize, okay, my direction, go back to the direction conversation, my direction is not helping me stay on the correct side of my center. That's why the hands and feet thing is so important, because wherever your hands and feet are, you start to realize that your center is on those sides. And so now I need to know what my direction is doing. And so if you go back to let's just go back to that bridge position. It's a funny bridge position. Okay. There's the bridge. There's their center. They need to travel this way because their hips are over here. Okay, and their pivot point is right there, and they got too much angle going on. So they're going to have to travel that way. So they're probably going to have to push and maybe get like some knee bend going so that they can do something like this. Okay, obviously their body proportions are never going to help them in that type of drawing. But now they've got to push their hips and move their hips over their feet. But then they got to push and they've got to be like, okay, yeah, but I got to get more like this, right? I got to get more of my body stacked. And then it's like, well, yeah, but you've actually got to get more of your body stacked. And so everything's trying to stack. And while it's doing that, you're pushing everything more forwards and you're trying to get there and you're adjusting. So you're using your knees. You're using your knees to help move the hips forwards and keep everything moving this direction. And so you're making all these shape compromises to try to stay on top. And a lot of it is because your flexibility isn't where it needs to be. So you got to change the flexibility. But again, we have a staying on top of center problem. That is generally the issue, is getting on top of our center at the right place, at the right time, on the up, or getting on top of our center, going from the up, which is we're below it, and then on the rise, getting on top of it, so then we're set up for the down. Last thought on shape change, twisting, okay? Twisting. And there's an arc, okay? Here's our center. When you do twisting, it's important to understand that on the fall, so we're going to go this direction, okay? On the fall, that's where we want most of the half twist to be. We want the half twist to happen on the fall. Now, you're going to need to learn to do the half on the rise because you're going to have to half on the rise and then half on the fall to get your full in. We're not trying to initiate twisting here and spend the most time twisting. We're trying to get the least amount of time in the arc, okay, to twist. So we're trying to put the first half here and the second half here. We're trying to get it there. And then when we want to do more twisting, what we try to do is we want to stack the next half here on the rise. And then you want to try to stack the next half here. So you're trying to get the twist to initiate earlier and earlier so that you have more height out of the fall, more finish on everything. And so the last half is happening here. As you do higher level twists, this whole system kind of gets shifted over a little bit, but you're still trying your best to stack it. And so again, there's this rise and there's this fall, and there's knowing what shape change happen on the rise, what shape changes happen on the fall. And so that's the story of being up in the air. I know that we talked about skills that were on the surface, like your bridge, your front limbers, rolling, etc. And those are all surface things, and that's where we started talking about center of mass, okay, or your center of gravity. But that really story applies the most to the being up in the air. I just translated it to skills on the surface so you can kind of still understand how it correlates to everything else. So that's my story. These are shapes. The better you understand this and how it applies to all your skills, the more trained your eye is going to become to seeing what the shape problem is. Always starts with your direction usually, and then it comes into becoming a shape problem because you're not in the correct shape at the correct place. You're not on the correct side of your center at the correct spot, and you're not entering, loading, and launching appropriately. You're not doing things on the up. You're not doing things on the down that is supposed to happen when, where, and how. And so understanding this, looking at skills and being able to identify these key points is going to improve your decision-making skills and what solution to chase after. So I just kind of challenge you with taking this concept, go look at skills and see if you can identify these key points. It's not actually a lot. I know I spoke a lot about it, but it's not really a lot. There's what's the up, what's the down, how am I entering, how am I loading, how am I launching, and then are my hands and feet on which side of my shoulders am I finding straight? That's it. So there's not a lot of things. There's only 8 things really that you need to worry about. So that's the story of shapes. In the next video, we'll be talking about angle.